Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Outlook for August through November 2018. This is Gina McGuire. Since October 1st, 2017, over the winter and spring, we've seen well below normal precipitation, especially over the southern half of the Great Basin. Only areas across parts of Wyoming into central and eastern Idaho have seen near to above normal precipitation since last October. Also, we have had near normal precipitation overall along the Sierra and into the Sierra front. If we look at the last two winters, we've continued to talk about the winter of 2016 to 2017 and the well above normal and record-setting winter precipitation we saw over western and northern Nevada up into Idaho, northern Utah, and Wyoming. Obviously, what this did for us last summer was give us a lot of fine fuels and grass crop in those areas, and with the drier winter we've seen in 2017-2018, that fuel has carried over into this season. So we are dealing with the carryover fine fuels from last year, as well as the wet weather we saw later in the spring this year, which brought us several new crops of cheatgrass over parts of western and northern Nevada into southern Idaho. Looking at the drought monitor, we do have extreme to exceptional drought over parts of the eastern and southern half of Utah, and then we have had drought return to southern and eastern Nevada into western Utah, where we have moderate drought with abnormally dry conditions in the yellow area further north and west. We likely won't see much change to the drought across Idaho and Nevada. However, we may see the drought improve over parts of Utah and into far eastern Nevada as we continue to see at least some precipitation with thunderstorms. Looking at the temperature and precipitation the last 30 days, we have had warm temperatures across much of the west, and we also have had very dry conditions over the northern half of the Great Basin, with the monsoon moisture that settled in earlier in the month brought us above normal precipitation for southern areas of the Great Basin. With these drier conditions that have emerged recently over the northern half of the area, we do have a fuels and fire behavior advisory out for western and northern Nevada, up into northwest Utah, and into Idaho, especially for elevations below about 6,500 feet with the grasses. With very dry conditions, we've seen extreme fire behavior in these regions. Looking at the temperature we saw throughout June, generally we saw warm conditions also, especially over the southern half of the Great Basin, with very dry conditions. However, again, that did turn around in July over the southern half of the area. Looking at our 10-hour fuel moistures with the drier conditions that have remained over the northern half of the basin, 10-hour fuel moistures are very dry. Even over parts of Utah that had the monsoon moisture move up, we have had some drier areas that have returned our 10-hour fuel moisture to lower values. 100-hour fuel moistures are lowest over the northern half of the Great Basin, and similar with 1,000-hour fuels, we're seeing the lowest conditions over northern Nevada into northwest Utah and into southern Idaho. How this has affected our fuel conditions: ERCs have changed dramatically over the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, we were seeing more moderate ERC values for the northern half of the Great Basin, and that moisture returned to the south, dropping the ERCs to below the 50th percentile. However, recently, with the warm and dry conditions, ERCs have increased to above the 90th or even 97th percentile over the northern half of the area. It's this area of the basin that will be most critical as we go through the month of August. Now looking at our charts for current fire danger indices for ERC across parts of the Great Basin. Up into central Idaho, the chart in the top right shows how steadily the ERCs have continued to climb over the last few weeks and are near or exceeding historic highs for the time of year. Looking over northern Utah, the bottom right map, very similar conditions with ERCs near or at record highs. We are also seeing these conditions into northern Nevada. Looking into southeast Utah, we did see the big dip in ERCs as the monsoon moisture developed earlier in the month of July. However, ERCs have been climbing and are actually near historic highs for the time of year, even though they're quite a bit lower than other areas of the Great Basin. They are high relative for the time of year for southeast Utah. Looking at sagebrush live fuel moisture, you'll see in all these graphs sagebrush fuel moisture has continued to be on the downward trend, which is not surprising with the drier conditions, and is really near or just below normal across the Great Basin. Our Great Basin fire activity as of the last day in July really started to pick up over the northern half of the Great Basin, with those larger fires emerging and continuing with fire growth several days. So we will continue to see areas over the northern half of the Great Basin really increase in fire potential as we go through the month of August. Now that we've looked at the past and the current conditions, we'll go into the forecast outlook for the next several months. First, looking at the 6 to 10 day outlook, which takes us from August 6th through August 10th, We will have a trough moving into the northwest, which is unusual for the time of year. It will drop temperatures a little bit, but also bring better potential for dry and breezy conditions to the northern half of the Great Basin. Looking at precipitation, with those troughs moving in, precipitation will generally be below normal for the Great Basin and above normal up into the Pacific Northwest. If we look at the 1-month outlook taking us through the month of August, we will see a return of above normal temperatures and still below normal precipitation in the north, especially with near to above normal precipitation in the south, which is again that monsoon moisture really just remaining in place over southern Utah and the Arizona Strip. If we look at September through November, we're looking at generally warm conditions, which seems to be the trend lately, and also drier conditions, especially across Idaho and to parts of northern Nevada. We may still see an above normal precipitation signature in the south. So again, looking at the outlooks for the next few months, it's really the northern half of the Great Basin which will continue to be the focus for above normal fire potential. So if we put everything together, here is our outlook for the Great Basin. For August, we will continue with that above normal potential for large fire, especially over western northern Nevada, into northern Utah and up into Idaho. And again, it's many of these areas that we've continued fuel and fire behavior advisories for the extreme fire behavior we've been observing. As we go into September, if we continue to see those warm and dry conditions, we will continue to see above normal fire potential, especially in the lower elevations with the grass crop, if that dry weather really does remain in place, over western and northern Nevada, and then again up into Idaho. By October and November, as things cool down and days get shorter, we do expect fire potential to return to normal across the Great Basin. That concludes our webcast for our monthly and seasonal outlook. Check back next month for the latest updates.